Hello everyone, wishing you a beautiful day. Sometimes the heart remembers someone long before fate brings them back. In today's story, we'll discover how one brief encounter left behind a quiet longing and opened the road to an unexpected love. If you enjoy romantic stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and stay with us for the next video. After that day, the market never felt quite the same to Tieu Lac. On the surface, everything went back to normal. Vendors still called out prices from morning to late afternoon. Children still ran past with sticky hands and laughing faces. Women still paused at stalls to compare vegetables, fabrics, baskets, sweets. Festival season slowly softened into ordinary market days again, and life returned to its usual rhythm of effort, bargaining, and survival. But inside Tieu Lac, something had shifted. It was not loud, not dramatic. It was the kind of change that hides in the smallest moments. In the pause before she called out to customers, in the way her eyes lifted whenever footsteps approached from behind, in the strange quiet that entered her chest whenever she remembered the dusty young man who had stepped in for her when everyone else looked away. She still did not know his name. That bothered her more than she wanted to admit. At first, she told herself it was only gratitude. Of course she thought about him. Anyone would. He had appeared at the most frightening moment of her day, faced down two men who had cornered her, and then disappeared almost as quickly as he had arrived. It was natural, she told herself, to remember someone like that. But the memory did not fade. If anything, it grew clearer. She remembered the roughness of his clothes, the grease on his sleeve, the dust on his trousers, the scratches along his arm. She remembered the way he stood, steady, unafraid, not trying to impress anyone, only refusing to walk away. She remembered the brief smile he gave her after everything was over. A small, almost shy smile that somehow felt warmer than all the polished charm in the world. Most of all, she remembered the way he had looked at her. Not with pity, not with curiosity, not with the distant kindness people sometimes offer the poor to feel better about themselves. He had looked at her as if she mattered, as if what was happening to her mattered, and that was not easy to forget. So in the days that followed, Tieu Lac found herself searching. Not openly, not foolishly. She would never have admitted it if someone asked. But every time she brought her basket to the market, some part of her attention drifted through the crowd, looking for him. Whenever she heard a firm voice nearby, she looked up. Whenever she saw a young man in work clothes weaving through the stalls, her heart would jump before her mind could stop it. Then she would realize it was someone else, and quietly lower her gaze again. At first, she told herself she only wanted to thank him properly. She had thanked him that day, yes. But everything had happened too quickly. Fear was still in her chest. The guards were shouting. People were staring. Then someone had called him away to fix a broken cart, and he had gone before she could ask even the simplest question. What was his name? Where did he work? Was he from nearby? Would she see him again? Those unanswered questions stayed with her, and because they stayed, she began to notice something strange about the market itself. He was spoken of. Not often, not in long conversations, but in passing, the way people mention someone they are used to seeing. One morning, an old vegetable seller muttered, "If that repair boy comes by, tell him this shelf is wobbling again." Another day, a tea vendor complained that the latch on her storage box was broken, and added, "That dusty young fellow fixed it last time in no time at all." Once a milk seller laughed and said, "That boy works harder than 3 grown men and still doesn't know how to rest." Each time Tieu Lac heard those words, she listened without seeming to. Repair boy, dusty young fellow, that boy. No one said his name clearly while she was close enough to catch it. Or if they did, the market noise swallowed it before it reached her. Still, every small mention made him feel more real and more distant at the same time. He existed in this world of hers, moving through it, helping people, fixing what was broken, appearing where needed and disappearing again before she could find him. That somehow made her think of him even more. One afternoon, after selling nearly half her basket, she stood beneath the shade of a cloth awning and let her eyes travel through the crowd again. A man carrying bamboo poles passed. Two boys ran by chasing each other. A woman in a faded blue blouse bargained over fish. Farther off, a young worker bent beside a cartwheel, tightening something with both hands. Tieu Lac's heart stumbled. She took one step forward before realizing it was not him. The shoulders were wrong, the hair was shorter. The movement lacked that same calm sharpness she remembered. She stopped herself and looked away quickly, embarrassed by the force of her own disappointment. What was she even doing? He had helped her. That was all. Perhaps he had already forgotten her. Why wouldn't he? To him, she might have been nothing more than one frightened market girl among many people he crossed paths with in a busy day. He seemed like the kind of person everyone called for when something broke, the kind of person whose time belonged to whoever needed help next. Why should he remember one brief conversation by a fruit stall? That thought stung more than she expected, and yet she kept looking. Days passed, then more days. The market slowly changed with the season. Some stalls moved, new goods appeared. Familiar faces came and went. Tieu Lac worked as she always did, making candied fruit, carrying baskets, counting coins, helping at home, stretching each day as far as it could go. But beneath all of that, hidden under habit and necessity, was a quiet thread of longing she did not know how to name. Then one morning, something unusual happened. The market was buzzing earlier than usual, and not with ordinary gossip. Vendors were talking fast, voices jumping over one another with the kind of excitement usually reserved for festival days or unexpected luck. A traditional goods fair was being held in the city. Not just any fair, but a large one. A proper city market event, people said. A place where sellers from different areas could bring handmade goods, local food, old-fashioned sweets, woven products, pickled fruits, herbal drinks, and all sorts of village specialties. There would be banners, music, city visitors, and more buyers than an ordinary village market could ever hold in a week. Tieu Lac listened while arranging her basket, not thinking it had anything to do with her. Then one of the older women from a neighboring stall turned and said, "You should go." Tieu Lac blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," the woman replied, already sounding annoyed that this needed explaining. "Your candied strawberries sell well. They look pretty too. City people like things that feel traditional and handmade." Another vendor joined in. "She's right. You should bring your goods there. It's a good chance." Tieu Lac shook her head immediately. "No, I don't think I can." "Why not?" the milk seller asked. Tieu Lac hesitated. The reasons felt too obvious to say out loud. The city was far. A stall there would sound expensive. Transport cost money. Packaging mattered. Presentation mattered. People from the city might laugh at her simple basket and country clothes the same way girls at the spring market had laughed. That kind of place did not feel meant for someone like her. As if hearing all those fears without being told, the old vegetable seller clicked her tongue. "You're thinking too much. The stall fee is sponsored." Tieu Lac looked up sharply. "Sponsored?" "So they say," the woman replied. "Some company in the city is funding the event. Sellers with traditional products are being invited. They want authentic goods from the villages." Another added, "Transport's being arranged for some of us too. If you join with the group, it won't cost much." The words landed slowly in Tieu Lac's chest. A city fair. A chance to sell in front of more people. A chance to earn more in a few days than she might otherwise earn in many ordinary market mornings. It sounded unreal, and because it sounded unreal, it frightened her. "I've never sold in the city," she admitted quietly. The milk seller laughed kindly. "Then it's time you do." A fabric vendor nodded. "We'll help you prepare. You don't have to go alone. That mattered more than they knew. Tieu Lac lowered her eyes to the basket, thinking. Part of her wanted to refuse. It was safer to stay where everything was familiar, even if familiar meant small and difficult. But another part of her, the part that had quietly survived disappointment after disappointment, recognized opportunity when it finally knocked. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. A better place to sell, a better chance to bring home more money, a better road, even if only for a short while. So after a long pause, she gave a small nod. I'll try. The women around her smiled with immediate satisfaction, as though the matter had already been decided long before she spoke. Plans began at once. One would help her prepare cleaner wrapping paper. Another knew someone traveling to the city fair and could save her space. Someone else suggested adding a small sign to make her stall look nicer. Advice came from every side, practical and fast, until Tieu Lac barely had time to absorb it all. By the time the market quieted that afternoon, her mind was full. She would go to the city. She would stand among bigger stalls, stranger faces, louder voices, and try to sell as if she belonged there. What she did not know, what no one thought to tell her in that busy swirl of planning, was that the fair itself was being funded by a rising young CEO known in the city for supporting traditional trade, local sellers, and handmade village products. And she certainly did not know that this same young CEO was the dusty, grease-stained repair boy she had been searching for in the market crowd all this time. So that night, as Tieu Lac sat sorting strawberries by lamplight, her thoughts drifted once again to the young man she had not seen since the day he saved her. She wondered where he was. She wondered whether she would ever meet him again. After the frightening day at the market, Tieu Lac tries to return to normal, but something inside her has changed. She cannot stop thinking about the dusty young repair boy who stepped in to protect her when no one else would. Though she tells herself it is only gratitude, his memory only grows stronger. Day after day, she quietly searches the market for him, listening for hints, catching small mentions of a hard-working young man who fixes broken things and disappears just as quickly. Then an unexpected opportunity arrives. A large traditional goods fair in the city invites village sellers to bring their handmade products. Encouraged by the other vendors, Tieu Lac bravely agrees to go, hoping for a better chance to earn money and change her future. What she does not know is that the fair's young sponsor is the very same man she has been longing to find again.